mentioned psychometric testing. I want to stay in that area for a moment because it's very important what you said. An individual coming in there with a good sense of right and wrong, or coming in with a not perfect sense. Nobody's got a perfect sense. Coming in with a challenge sense, but taught, how to improve on that. If he is so equipped, if he gets into a situation where his peers are in the business long enough, too long, or maybe they're some bad actors. If he has this sense, then he also becomes an asset to the service because he understands right and wrong. He does not fall into the peer pressure thing of staying quiet, but in fact he seeks to change it. Is that also part of the thinking behind this?
Well, you've touched on something that's hidden inside there, and they're now dealing with it across the world internationally, which is called whistleblowing.
Yes.
He not only has to emulate a certain type of behavior and carry it out, but he also has to evaluate for his own sense of safety and survival in a group. How do I create a better judgmental position, given that these people out there are seasoned in street behavior? This is not what my academy has taught me. This is not what is written in the books for professional delivery to the public. But this is a group of people who, by virtue of not being supervised properly, and the whole set of training and retraining and the tools given to them, that their inclination to go wrong, they went wrong.
There's also cognizance of the friendly fire scenario that he has to consider.
Exactly.
The voice you hear that is of Jerry Goodridge, and we are talking, he's a security analyst. We're talking about a couple of areas laying the foundation for the continuation of our discussion. Psychological testing was one area. It is. I was a little reserved because it's a position I hold. When you said earlier that a lot of the emphasis is put now on the technological tools and not that much drilling and so on. And when I always feel that if an officer is not totally equipped, which is to say physically equipped and comfortable mentally and so on, and knowing some really good form of martial arts or some kind of training self-defense, then he would be more inclined to reach for his firearm. I always feel that to me, it's just a bias. I see a smaller officer and I say, okay, if he got into a situation with a much bigger guy, then the next course is going to be reach for the gun. I see a guy like you walk into a situation.
Let me clear up that perception. One, it was felt that a militaristic form of interaction, physical interaction, through drill, march, and then you put form into it, so you could march, you could slow march, you could about turn, and all of that was exercising in the old days. So you had to do that to bring a fit person. But there is a big difference between ceremonial behavior and physical fitness. Because at the end of a march, like my first march in 1975, I marched in Sandy Grande for independence. And at the end of the march, we didn't get nutriment. We went into the canteen. And you know what was served in the canteen? No, I was not consuming beers or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, if you have that kind of concentration on a professional development of your force, you're supposed to have nutritionists. You're supposed to have people who are into proper exercise and everything. So we have a fitter, better police officer for his own health and well-being, as compared to one who could march for 5 miles. Your feet may get strong, but your arms may not get strong. When you go to grapple somebody or do firearm retention, you can't do it because your arms are not strong. So we need to study that physical fitness. What we're looking for is a traditional behavior where we see armed or uniformed people moving in unison, and we like that. We like that display. But is it relevant to the core content of the development of the officer, where he has to do so many more things now?
So you're saying that we should have a marching corps? A call for marching.
Just choose a group of people who love to do that and have them go to every funeral and every ceremony. But the average officer, to keep fit, there should be a gymnasium in the division. There should be somebody who is a PT expert, a physical instructor,
constant monitoring,
and monitor their blood pressure, everything, and make sure that their waistline doesn't go beyond a certain size, and they can do certain things. Then we're talking professional development of a group of people.
Well, in the scheme of things, that may seem as a small thing, but it's one of the things that I know that actually gives out confidence. It's almost like your calling card before you get there. You look nice, fit, and ready, as against some guy who looked like he couldn't go half the block with with me. But we have to get to technology in dealing with the preparedness of the police service before we go into other areas. Firearm training, that's your specialty area. How well trained our police officers?
Well, that's a gray area. Because it is not a yardstick we're going to use. For instance, in my day, and I'm going to talk about it, and they say I've got clothes for some things when you're talking Trinidad. In my day, the instructor crew, they were divided into classroom instructors and physical instructors and musketry and drill instructors, and all of the senior officers who taught me, they were excellent shots. They were excellent shooters. So you had that division. They would teach you, and officers wanted to emulate that officer. You look at I will call readily a gentleman by the name of Alexander, for instance. When he stood and he held a gun, he could put 5 shots through the same hole, and you emulated that kind of stuff. That was a theater. It was a theater of behavior called musketry and drill. But when we had to come now and turn that into a reality-based concept, and I think that is where the police are always judged, not how good you are on the range, but whether or not somebody believes that he should have shot the man in his arm or in his leg, and why did they have to kill the man. It's a total different psychological concept and a physiological behavior in defending oneself. When the adrenaline dumps, when you have that aspect of fear for one's life, when you have a whole set of protocols in handling the firearm that diminishes when there's heightened aggression. And that is where simulation training and a number of other things need to be carried out a bit more.
Some of the details you in there is where I want to go to, but you opened the door, so let me just continue walking in it. The common perception by a lot of folks, particularly if they don't think someone to be a villain, is going to be, well, why couldn't they just shoot to injure him and not kill him? I know the argument has been had in New York for a lot of times, and the information we get coming out of the police there is that you look for the biggest area, and that's what police are trained for. Is that so? Is that a misnomer? I mean,
it's nice that you raise it in that way, because that is a man in the street concept. Let me explain something to you, and it's
now we have had the NYPD give us that argument. You're shooting for the biggest area.
Yeah, but the NYPD said that, and the captain and the man in charge of NYPD, but not the instructors on the range. I work with a number of those guys. There's an organization in up Muncie in New York. It's called Sniper Inc. Right? What we do, we analyze human behavior. And from the time you get aroused, we know that you lose a peripheral vision and it goes into tunnel vision. And when you go into tunnel vision, this whole question of discriminating point shooting into this area or that, or rather shoot him in his leg or in his arm, the eye sees a general area that is a location that is easier to pinpoint than trying to discriminate against where I'm going to put the shot. And that symbiotic relationship between the back sight and the front sight, you lose the back sight, so you have your front sight there on what you're looking at, and it draws it down into a tunnel vision response. If you take the same officer who would have shot that person and squeezed that trigger 5-6 times, shooting into center of mass, if you take that same officer and we put him on the range in a man-sized target, and you take a concentric circle and put it on and give him time. Every time he is going to close one eye and try to get a bullseye shot. But if he doesn't have time, he just comes up with a gun and points into the mass and squeezes. And all the time, the eye brings you into center of mass, because that is where the density of the vision on your retina comes into play.
But the more training you have, the more likely is it that you will shoot to injure, because you've had enough training and you had scenarios put before
Rennie,
you.
let me put it to you so that it will alleviate that. The only time that happens is when you are an X factor in a shooting, like you are a marksman deployed in a different position where you have time, you're not involved in the emotional aspect of it. It is clinical that you have to, in inverted commas, take this shot to cause dysfunctional or anything. But if that same sniper is carrying his handgun and he is confronted, he is not going to have that time
Gotcha.
to differentiate point of aim and impact as something that the public will want him to say. He's a big time shooter and he couldn't shoot the man in his knee or in his ankle or in where. It just doesn't happen so with a human being.
When you're away from the kitchen, you can make a lot of the comments on the
Exactly.
cooking. Okay, I got that. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, you would say on par with the expectation of a police officer that our police officers here in Trinidad and Tobago are, let's say, 5 and above in their training.
No, I would say that they are 9 in their training. Hold it. They are 9 in their training at the academy. The instructors work to bring them to a level. But there's something called continuity, and with firearms, which is a diminishing skill, an officer with a firearm should be on the range at least once per month to fire a minimum of about 10 rounds. It doesn't happen. It is yet to happen.
What is the norm here? What it is now about?
Well, again, proof in the pudding. When I was involved in shooting, officers will come, those who are members of the shooting club, which I helped to resuscitate, they would be on the range almost every week. And we would have seen about 30, 40, 50 officers engaging in that. What they have in place now, I am not too sure of the consistency in which training is done, but I do know that they create a level of pass-fail, and if you fail, you go back to do remedial work, and there's a simulation range going on at the academy and so on, so that the efforts at getting the officer ready for street and work. The problem is with everyone, the time frame in which they may go back or they may avail themselves with training.
19 minutes after 11 o'clock, you inside Brunch on 107.7. My guest is Certified International Security and Law Enforcement Training Advisor, Jerry Michael Goodridge. We are talking about the state of crime here, and I wanted to lay down the foundation. One final area of inquiry before we go into some actual events that's happening here. Technologically, how prepared is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to the best of your knowledge?
Well, my last discussion last week, I had a meeting last week at the Commissioner's office, and with one of the operations areas, the Garden Emergency Branch and IATF. If we're talking the category in which we're speaking about, Garden Emergency and IATF, very well endowed in equipment and technology. However, the way the service is at this point in time, it is not like long ago when the average officer would have been exposed to across-the-board training. Now you have specialist units. You have units in the police service that they're very good in film. They have the film unit, and they have the fraud squad, and you have, so that there are pockets of professionalism not available to the officer on the street. And if something happens and you meet the average Joe who don't know, he don't know because he's not in a unit or a section. But the technology that they would have from smoke, different types of the deployment tools that they have, GB, I know that they're well poised. And ATF, the IATF, they have a beautiful program going on. They have ongoing training that bring in officers from other divisions and branches and do training to bring them up to speed with the level of altercation that they may have out there. I've had the opportunity to interact with IATF on a number of occasions in passing on the expertise in the use of force development program that we've had. Those officers, there was a gentleman there, Mr. Allen. He was one of the guys who was a sticker for getting it right the first time. So we had a nice coordination in exchange of ideas and development for his group.
So you're saying in select units, we have the necessary technology for like eavesdropping and droids to do, silence, quiet surveillance and X-ray.
Well, in law enforcement, I don't know about the eavesdropping, but in one of my dispensations, I would have called in one of the units to do a sweep. Which is, one of the things that we are in Trinidad. We have stuff and we don't talk about it because to talk about it is taboo. And that's a big problem. We really, I'm talking to one or two of officers sometimes, and when a criticism is made for why did this thing not work and function, you hear, but we have that. You have it and it's not being used.
Because I mean, if you don't like, if for those who don't, for the PR part of it, if they want to, you don't have to say eavesdropping, just the information gathering. It's the same thing.
Exactly.